Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. So, I've been in conversation with Abby Martin. I'm trying to get Abby Martin to come onto the show, and so we've been sending emails back and forth. So, I may be giving an announcement pretty soon that Abby will be coming on the show. Fingers crossed. We're big fans of her, so I really hope she takes me up on the offer to come for an interview. The thing I want to talk about today, and this one is going to be relatively quick. I don't want to spend too much time on this one. But my wife and I were talking about it, so here we are. In 1600s, there was a war between Parliament and the King of England. If I'm not mistaken, this was Charles I. And Charles I tries to run roughshod over Parliament, and he gets a rude awakening when he finds out that Parliament raises an army, and Parliament whoops his ass. Now you must understand, this is monumental. You have the king and the monarchy itself having this squaring off with Parliament, this idea of commons, and trying to make the determination on who will hold sway in regards to running the UK or running Britain. The king lost. Despite the king losing, it remains. I mean, the monarchy remains. It's 2018. It's time to have a come to Jesus. When I was a child, we used to pretend that we were cowboys and Indians. We used to pretend of cops and robbers. And we used to play doctor. That was the other thing. But at some point, we grew up. And we became things. There's an odd quirk in Britain that you have certain people in the country who haven't grown up, who have remained in this thing of infantilism, and unfortunately the public has essentially fed into this level of pretend. There is no such thing as a royal family. What I mean by that is, I've made the argument, I've assiduously stuck to the argument, that there is no heaven above or hell below that is telling you and dictating the way your society is run or arranged. That is an issue of choice. If I am saying that, then the idea of a royal family, a king or queen or prince or princess, flies in the face of that. Because what they indicate is that they are somehow appointed by God. Yeah, you're not appointed by anybody. You're just regular human beings who, in some odd quirk, have been able to convince a large number of people to believe that you were somehow better than they are. You're not. I hate to disabuse you of that illusion, but you are not. You're just regular people. For the pleasure of this pretend, for the pleasure of these guys running around in robes and fancy hats and walking around with the, the whatever that thing is called that they hold in their hand, I can't think of the name of it. Britain pays hundreds of millions of dollars for the pleasure. They come up with all sorts of reasoning as to why Parliament or why the monarchy must exist. But they pay for that pleasure millions of dollars. The Queen gets... This was from the Telegraph, but this is the Insider. Royal families don't come cheap. The Telegraph reports that it costs 300 million pounds to run the British monarchy each year. Not just that, the amount of money they get back is from the sovereign fund, which British taxpayers, which amounts to $40 million. And that amount goes up each year. Do you really want to pay hundreds of million dollars to pretend that certain people are better than others? What this amounts to is just a reality show on an international scale. They're kings and they're queens and they're princesses and they're having a royal wedding, and look at them walking around with a scepter, that's the name of it. And look at their robes and the pageantry, and that pastor, this is theater. You could have used that money to deal with a rising homeless population in Britain. You could have used that money to deal with, hey, paying for the National Healthcare Service. What about a police force dealing with all these stabbings that are taking place in Britain? You can use that money for real tangible things in the country itself. You guys have been imposing austerity while at the same token giving this woman $300 million or 300 million pounds to pretend that she's somehow better than the other Brits. This is lunacy. Come to Jesus. Wake up. I feel this in two ways. I've said I have this affinity for Britain. I get from an emotional level this idea of pageantry and iconography and this kind of idea that this is a king and a queen and Britain and all. I get all that stuff. But from an intellectual level, I have to look at the world and the government from the standpoint of, are we run by commons or are we run by this idea of God? And this weird fudge from the standpoint of Britain, where they maintain this monarchy, it's time to do away with childish things. Pretend, pageantry. It's time to do away with childish things. You can use that $300 and some odd million for actual better things, as opposed to feeding into the delusions of a small segment of people who want to prance around as if they are somehow royal creatures. This is nonsense. The wedding is nonsense. They're regular people who are doing pretend. You can use that money for better things, Britain. It's time to nix that monarchy. Come to Jesus. I'll end this here. If you guys enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, and subscribe. You can always support through Patreon. I don't mean to be a hard ass on this, but that's a lot of money to be spending to just give people to pretend. And ultimately, what you're telling me is, what does it mean to be a royal family, and how do you become a royal family? And if you become a royal family purely and only through birth, then this is appointment by God. This is an utter and complete appointment by God. So yeah, if I don't have this belief that God appoints these people, then these are just regular people that have conned the public into believing that they are something more than exactly what they are. This is nonsense. You're ruled by commons. You make your choices. If God wants to have a vote, God needs to bring his ass down so I can examine the character of God. Up until that point, this is nonsense. Thanks, guys.